Class, let's continue our discussion. On general principles. So we know that the power of taxation is an inherent power of the state, but it is not an absolute power. Okay? Power of taxation is subject to what we call inherent and constitutional limitations. So if you look at our G sheets, nakalista na dyan yan, inherent limitations and constitutional limitations. If you notice class, yung inherent, meron lang 5. Okay? 5 inherent limitations. Yung constitutional, masyadong marami, 17. So gato lang technique dyan. Tandaan mo lang yung 5 inherent limitations, basta wala doon, constitutional limitation. Okay? So ganyan. Now, what is the difference between inherent limitations and constitutional limitations? Pag sinabi mong constitutional limitations, they are explicit sa Constitution natin. Minention talaga yun sa Constitution. If hindi minention sa Constitution, ang tawag natin doon, inherent limitations. Got it? So by its nature, ito yung mga limitations of the power of taxation. Mag-start muna tayo sa inherent limitations. Alright? We have 5. Ito yung acronym natin dyan. Or mnemonics natin. P, E, N, I, wholesome tayo dito. So, ibahin natin. Wholesome. Okay. P-I-N-E-S. Ayan. Pines na lang. Right? Ayan. Pines. Okay. So, briefly discuss natin each. P is for public purpose. Again, why does the government impose taxes? To defray the expenses. And the expenses na yun, it's for public purpose. Right? Such as free education, health, safety, agriculture, etc. For public purpose. So, ibig sabihin din yung class, hindi pwedeng gamitin yung taxes for private interest. Alright? Yun yung ibig sabihin, din yung implication yan. Okay, that's what you call, that's the first inherent limitation. Letter I is international committee. Ayan, international committee. Ang ibig sabihin ng class ng international committee, the property or a state, okay, ibig sabihin ng international committee, a state cannot tax another state. Okay? A state cannot tax another state. Si Philippines, hindi mo pwedeng taxan si Indonesia. Hindi mo pwedeng taxan si Malaysia, okay, si Japan, etc. Ang pwede lang niyang taxan is within its jurisdiction or territory. Yun yung ibig sabihin ng international committee. Ang isa pang implication ng class, kaya yung mga expats, yung mga embassies, yung mga ambassadors, hindi yung taxable. Okay? Walang binabayaran na tax yun. That's in compliance with the concept of international committee. And then yung mga multilateral organizations, familiar ba kayo sa ADB, Asian Development Bank, yung UNESCO, right? Hindi subject to tax yung mga yan. Yung ADB, di ba sa Ortigas yan, yung ADB Avenue, nandun yung office nila. Okay? So if I'm not mistaken, ADB itself is not taxable. Yung mga empleyado doon, hindi rin taxable. Right? And I believe also yung may Starbucks sa loob doon. I think hindi rin taxable yung Starbucks doon. Okay? Hindi rin subject to VAT yata. If I'm not mistaken. Pero for sure, yung ADB as an organization and other multilateral organizations, to be consistent with the concept of international committee, hindi sila taxable. Alright? Letter N is non-delegability of taxing power. So class, sino nga ba yung merong exclusive power of taxation? It's the Congress or the legislature. Ang general rule natin, hindi pwedeng i-delegate yan. Meron tayong 3 exceptions, okay, to the rule. Exceptions. Number 1, okay, if it's for administrative function. Okay? Kanino din-delegate class kapag administrative function? To the executive. Specifically, sa executive, to be more specific, kay BIR. Right? When you say administrative function, yun yung, again, yung assessment and collection. Exception to the rule yan. Second is delegability to or delegation to the LGUs, the local government units. So as we discussed earlier, through the local government code, dinelegate yung taxing power to the LGUs. Actually, meron pang isa class. Number 3 is delegation to the president to fix tariff rates. Okay, yung mga tariffs na yan, applicable yan class dun sa mga importation and exportation. Okay, it's a form of tax din kasi. Okay, yung tariffs na yan, according to Tariffs and Customs Code, si President, okay, President of the Philippines can fix the tariff rates. So, ko, very important. Madalas tinatanong sa general principles. Okay, yung exclusive power, nasa Congress, okay, nasa legislature, meron tayong 3 exceptions. Pwedeng i-delegate yan sa executive, okay, administrative lang, yung assessment and collection. Right? Pwedeng i-delegate to the LGUs, the local government units. Pwedeng i-delegate yung sa President, for tariff rates or for importation and exportation. That's for letter N. Letter E is exemption of the government. Exemption of the government. Okay, so ang exempted na government agencies, yung GSIS, exempted yan, SSS, PhilHealth, and then yung mga local water districts. Ayan. Exempted sa tax yan, binabayaran ng income tax yung mga yan. Ganito lang isipin nyo class, yung GSIS, SSS, PhilHealth, and local water districts, yung function nila is for public purpose. Got it? For the benefit of the public. So, it's very inefficient na since for public purpose na yan, okay, which is the purpose of taxation, Tapos itatax mo pa sila. Okay? So, counterproductive yung pag ginawa ng government yun. Kaya yung GSIS, SS, PhilHealth, local water districts, since for public purpose na sila, ginagawa na nila yung main purpose of taxation. Got it? So, hindi na taxable yung mga yan. On the other hand, yung ibang GOCCs, the government-owned or controlled corporations, for example, class, yung Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, Land Bank of the Philippines, Development Bank of the Philippines, okay? And then yung National Housing Authority and so on and so forth. NAPOCOR, ayan. Example siya ng mga GOCCs. Ito class, hindi yan technically for public purpose, to generate income yung purpose ng mga yan, right? Land Bank, Development Bank, well, for public purpose na rin, pero merong income component, okay? Now, yung GOCCs na yan, okay, they are subject to tax. Okay? Taxable sila. Okay? Because they generate profit basically. Alright? So, also class, sa train law, yung PCSO, dati kasi tax exempt yung PCSO. Yung PCSO is now taxable. Okay? Nung simula na naging effective yung train law. Alright? So, isipin nyo lang, kapag for public purpose, exempt na. Kapag hindi for public purpose, or mayroong mga income component like these GOCCs, taxable yung mga yan. Alright? Next is, so letter S is situs of taxation. When you say situs of taxation, this means place of taxation. Actually, expound natin yung class kapag diniscuss natin yung individuals. So, matututunan natin yung individuals depending on the classification of the individual kung saan yung babayaran niya na tax. Sa Philippines lang ba or kasama yung abroad? Alright? So, expound natin yan later on. But for now, tignan mo muna yung G-sheets natin. Okay? Bibigyan ko na rin kayo ng overview. Pero, again, i-expound natin to. Under situs of taxation, nakita nyo class yung subject matter and situs. Okay? So, persons, nakalagay dyan, residence of the taxpayer, real property, location. So, for example, para mas ma-visualize yung class, ganito lang ibig sabihin yan. Yung real property, for example, may property ka sa ibang bansa. Okay? Doon mo binenta. Hindi yan taxable sa Pilipinas. In general rule natin. Okay? Because yung situs of taxation, kung nasaan yung real property. Pag nandito yung real property, binenta mo sa Pilipinas, taxable yan. Got it? Pag tangible personal property, location, intangible, domicile of the owner, pag income, residence, citizenship, source of income, pag business, kung nasaan yung place of business. Okay? Tawag natin yan situs of taxation. Again, i-expound natin siya once we discuss yung individual. So for now, huwag mo na masyadong isipin yan. Alright, so we have these 5. Public purpose, international committee, non-delegability of taxing power, exemption of the government, and situs of taxation. Again, if wala dyan, ang tawag natin doon, constitutional limitations. Okay, so for constitutional limitations, gusto ko rin class, i-discuss to pero briefly lang per item. As you notice, nakasulat na dyan lahat and ang pipiliin mo na lang dyan or titignan mo na lang yung mga naka-bold na words, yun lang yung mga important dyan. Alright, so mabilis lang kasi marami yung constitutional limitations. Number 1 is, so lagyan natin dito, constitutional limitations. Okay, number 1 is due process of law. Sir, ano ibig sabihin ng due process of law? Bibigyan natin ng examples para mas malinaw. Okay, so in the Constitution, di ba, alam niyo yung no one should be deprived of his life, liberty, or property without the due process of law. Sa taxation class, may due process of law din. And it's evidenced by yung pag-diniscuss natin yung remedies. Okay, remedies. So, ganyan eh. Hindi pwedeng sabihin ni BIR na, oh, ikaw, kulang yung tax na binayad mo for 1 million, magbayad ka ng 1 million sa akin yan. Hindi pwede yun. Kasi meron tayong due process. So, later on, aralan sa remedies to, pero just an illustration, before before ka i-assess ni BIR, kailangan yung BIR officer meron siyang letter of authority or LOA. Okay? So, yung pag wala siyang LOA, hindi ka niya pwedeng i-assess. Right? So, let's say may LOA siya. And then, in-assess ka niya, chinek niya yung mga files mo, yung mga documents mo, yung records mo. Uy, may finding siya. Mag-i-issue siya na tinatawag natin na notice of discrepancy. Alright? Sa notice of discrepancy na yun, meron kang 5 days para mag-respond. If hindi ka mag-respond, mag-i-issue si BIR ng preliminary assessment notice. Alright? And then, meron kang 15 days para mag-respond. Pag hindi ka nag-respond, mag-i-issue si BIR ng final assessment notice. Okay? Meron kang 30 days to protest. Pwede mong i-protesta yun sa Court of Tax Appeals. Okay? Pagka dinenay ka ni Court of Tax Appeals, pwede mo siyang i-protest dun sa Supreme Court. So, ibig sabihin, hindi mo kailangan isulat yung mga sinabi ko na yan. Gusto ko lang na ma-appreciate mo. So, ibig sabihin, class, hindi basta na pwede kang i-assess ni BIR. Pabayarin ni BIR. Hindi. Meron tayong tinatawag Hindi mo kailangan isulat yung mga sinabi ko na yan. Gusto ko lang na ma-appreciate mo. So, ibig sabihin, class, hindi basta-basta na pwede kang i-assess ni BIR at pabayaran ni BIR. Hindi. Meron tayong tinatawag na due process. Okay? I-expound natin yan pag nandun tayo sa remedies. Next, equal protection of law. Actually, yung equal protection of law or equality, okay, and uniformity, closely related yan. Okay? Pwede mo sabihin na yan, similar yung dalawa na yan. Pero basically, when you say equal protection of law, ganito yan. So, sulat ko lang yung mga important. Persons and properties, okay, so write this down, with same conditions and circumstances, okay, are taxed the same. Yun yung ibig sabihin ng equal protection of law. Sige, basahin natin. Persons and properties with same conditions and circumstances, yun yung very important na words yan, are taxed the same. Okay, for example, class, ganito. Pag sinabi ni government, okay, o sige, yung mga nagbebenta ng Fortuner, yung VAT niyan is 12%. Pero pag ang binibenta mo is Montero Sport, Mitsubishi Montero Sport, yung VAT mo is 15%. Hindi pwede yun. Inequality yun. So pag sabi mo equal protection of law, si Fortuner and si Montero Sport, same conditions sila, same circumstances, they're taxed the same. Got it? Ang tawag natin doon, equal protection of law or equality. Now, again, yung uniformity is closely related to equality. Pero basically dyan, class, similar items are taxed equally. Pero uniformity, more of, ang focus nito is on the territory or the jurisdiction. Okay? So if persons and properties within the same territory, jurisdiction, dapat yung tax nila is just the same. Bigyan natin ng example. For example, class, yung, naalala nyo pa yung estate tax? Estate tax is now 6%, no? So yung estate tax, 6% siya dapat across the Philippines. Hindi mo pwedeng sabihin, sige, sa Luzon, 6% tayo. Sa Visayas, 8% tayo. Sa Mindanao, 10% tayo. Hindi pwede yun. That's a violation of uniformity of taxation. Again, pag sinabi uniformity, yung persons and properties within the same jurisdiction and territory, dapat uniform yung tax rates nila. Right? Pero again, yung dalawa na yung class, closely related yan, ha? Alright, equality and uniformity. Number 4, progressive. Ano nakalagay? Progressive system. Ayan, basta progressive, lagi mo lang iisipin yung graduated income tax table natin. Yung pinakita ko sa individuals, yun yung progressive system. Basically, ang ibig sabihin ng progressive system, yan din yung ability to pay. Mas kaya mo magbayad, mas mataas ang income mo, mas mataas yung tax mo. Right? Yun ang ibig sabihin niyan. Now, again, yung 17 na yung class na nakalista, lahat na makikita natin sa Constitution. Kaya tinawag dyan na constitutional limitations. Alright. Sige. Let's go to number 5. Number 5 is non-imprisonment for non-payment of poll tax. Okay, lagay ko na dito poll tax. Kasi ito yung rule. No? Yung rule is, pag hindi ka nagbayad ng tax, pwede ka ma-imprison. Okay? Non-payment of tax, right? Yung non-payment of tax is a crime, okay? Which leads to possible imprisonment. Ito yung exception dyan. Pag ang hindi mo binayaran is poll tax, hindi ka ma-imprison. Right? So, ulitin ko. General rule is, pag hindi ka nagbayad ng tax, pwede ka ma-imprison. Right? Subject to imprisonment kasi criminal liability yun. Now, kapag hindi ka nagbayad ng poll tax, hindi ka may-imprison. Bawal ka may-imprison kapag poll tax. Ano ba yung poll tax? Yung poll tax class, yun yung cedula or residence tax. Right? So, I don't know, until yun, required siya sa CPA exam na kailangan mong magbayad ng cedula or ng residence tax or community tax. Yung pa isang tawag yan, community tax. Actually, may discussion tayo dito, pero next time pa yan, ha? Community tax. Pag yun hindi mo binayaran, hindi ka may-imprison. Yun na ibig sabihin yan. Right? Pero this relates to yung basic community tax. Meron kasing dalawa yan, yung basic and additional community tax. Okay? So, basic community tax yung ibig sabihin yan. Alright, so let's go to number 6. Number 6 is non-impairment of obligations and contracts. Lagi ko na dito, oblicon. So, ano ibig sabihin ng non-impairment of obligations and contracts? Okay, so ibig sabihin yung class, yung rights and obligations of the parties na nasa private contract, hindi yan pwedeng maapektuhan ng bagong tax laws. Okay? Bigyan natin ng example. For example, class, si government and si PEZA. Ayan. Or yung mga nasa special economic zones. Diba, na-mention ko earlier, pag nasa PEZA ka, which we will discuss soon sa preferential taxation, usually meron kang income tax holidays yan. Income tax holidays, tapos yung tax rate mo is lower than the usual corporations, meron kang 5% gross income tax. So yan is an agreement between the government and PEZA. Alright? Contract yan. Okay? May obligations si PEZA, and si government, may rights and obligations yung dalawa na yan. Now, if nag-impose ng bagong batas, for example, yung CREATE, okay? Hindi pwedeng sabihin ng CREATE, kung may existing yan, for example, income tax holiday for 5 years. Alright? Let's say yung isang company nasa third year siya. Tapos bigla nag-introduce ng CREATE. For example lang, ang nakalagay doon, okay, lahat ng existing na sa PEZA, wala ng income tax holiday. Okay? And nasa third year ka pa lang. Hindi ka pwede maapektuhan because meron kang kontrata with the government na 5 years, wala ang babayaran ng tax. Okay? Hindi pwede mag-introduce ng bagong batas sa government na, okay, third year pa lang, wala na. Hindi ka nang, third year pa lang, expired yung income tax holiday. Hindi pwede yung ganun. Alright? So, tawag natin doon, non-impairment of obligations and contracts. Number 7, free worship laws. Sir, ano ibig sabihin ng free worship laws? Ibig sabihin, class, you are free to choose the right to worship. You are free to join any religion you want, any sect you want. Hindi mo kailangan magbayad ng tax para maka-join sa mga ganyan. Alright? In the same way, di ba sa mga churches, class, meron tithes and offerings? Are you familiar with that? Nagbibigay tayo ng tithes and offerings. Hindi rin subject of tax yun. Alright? So, yun ibig sabihin ng free worship laws. You're free to join, you're free to worship, and then in the same way, yung tithes and offerings doon, hindi subject to tax. Alright? Number 8. Exemption of religious, charitable, non-profit cemeteries and churches from property taxes. Lagyan na dito na churches. Charitable, ano kalagay? Religious, charitable. Religious, charitable, non-profit cemeteries, churches, and mosques from property taxes. Hindi sila subject to property taxes. Isulat mo dyan ng class, i-highlight mo dyan na property taxes lang. Ibig sabihin, possible na subject sila sa income tax. Got it? Property taxes lang nakalagay dyan. Alright? And then let's go to number 9. As opposed to number 9. Nakalagay dyan, sa number 9, lagyan natin. Number 9, exemption from taxes of the revenues and assets, right, of non-profit, non-stock educational institutions. So, dapat non-profit and non-stock educational institutions. Ang magandang example dito, class, yung mga state colleges and universities. Right? So, University of the Philippines, let's say, Pamantasan, Lungsod ng Maynila, and so on and so forth. So, yung mga state colleges and universities na yan, exempt sila both sa property taxes and income tax. So, yung number 8 class, again, property taxes lang yan, ha? While sa number 9, both income tax and property tax. Yun yung major difference nila. But take note, dapat, before you can be exempted, ito dapat yan, lahat ng yung properties mo and yung revenues mo must be actually, letter A, letter D, letter E. Actually, okay, directly, and exclusively, okay, actually, directly, exclusively used for charitable, religious, educational purposes. So, ibig sabihin, class, for example, non-stock educational institution ka. Tapos, ang ginagawa mo doon sa proceeds, pinangpapagawa mo ng rental properties, mga apartments, para sa other income. Masasubject ka na doon sa income and property tax. Dapat, actually, directly and exclusively, lahat ng proceeds doon, gamitin mo for the specific purpose. Charitable, religious, or educational institution. Remember that. Okay? 9. Ilan na? 9 na. Okay, lapit na. Number 10. Dito tayo sa number 10. Ano nakalagay ng class? No, non-appropriation of public funds or property for the benefit of any church, sect, or religion. For number 10, this shows yung separation of church and state. Alright? Separation of church and state. So, di ba class, meron tayong mga revenues, meron tayong mga taxes, meron tayong mga budget. Right? So, yung budget na yan, again, yung taxes natin is for public purpose. Pagka kasi nag-allocate ka, okay, nag-appropriate ka ng taxes para sa mga religions na yan, private purpose na yan. Got it? Private purpose na yan. Hindi na yung for public purpose. Kaya bawal yan. Again, yung rule natin, dito rin sa inherent limitation, yung taxes should be used for public purpose. Kaya, ayan, number 10 is basically separation of the church and state. Number 11, no money shall be paid out of treasury except in pursuance of an appropriation. Lagay ko lang sa number 11, appropriation. So class, yung budgetary process, actually, di-discuss natin yan sa AFAR. So, sa GAM, okay? So, yun yung Government Accounting Manual, yung GAM. Yun yung accounting standards natin para sa government agencies. Basically, pag inaral natin yung budgetary process, may makikita ka dun na, okay, may appropriation, merong allotment, okay, may allocation, and so on and so forth. Kailangan dumaan ka muna sa budgetary process before ka mag-allocate sa mga government agencies. For example, before ka mag-allocate sa DPWH, dadaan ka muna ng budgetary process. Di-discuss natin yan sa AFAR. Alright? Yun yung ibig sabihin ng class. No money shall be paid out of treasury. Okay? Kasi si Bureau of Treasury, siya yung nag-iingat ng pera. Si BIR nagko-collect, si Bureau of Treasury, siya yung may custody ng pera. No money shall be paid out of the treasury except in pursuance of an appropriation. Dapat dumaan ka muna sa budgetary process. Right? Number 11. Ano nakalagay dyan? concurrence of majority of all members of the Congress, yung important yung majority of all members, for the passage of law granting tax exemption. Lagay ko na tax exemption. So class, sino may power to create tax laws? It's the Congress. Sino yung may power to make tax exemptions? It's also the Congress. Take note, ang kailangan mo dyan, majority of all members of the Congress. I think 300 plus yata yung members of the Congress. So yan, majority ha. Number 13. Ano nakalagay dyan? Non-diversification of tax collections. Basically class, ang ibig sabihin ng non-diversification, ito lang din siya. Kailangan daw yung tax natin is for public purpose. So, lagay dito, non-diversification. Okay? So, yung tax collections, hindi siya pwedeng gamitin for private interest or for private individuals. Okay? It should be for public purpose lang. Hindi mo pwedeng i-diversify yan to the private individuals. Number 14. Uy, apat na lang. Non-impairment of the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court to review tax cases. Lagay ko na dito, Supreme Court to review tax cases. So this is in relation dun sa mentioned earlier na yung judiciary arm of the government, yung role niya is the interpretation of tax cases or yung pag-handle ng tax cases. Si Supreme Court yung may authority, may highest authority siya to decide tax cases. Di ba na-mention ko kayo sa kayo kanina na meron kang remedy, pwede kang mag-appeal sa Court of Tax Appeals, you can appeal dun sa Supreme Court. Pag nag-decide na yung Supreme Court na yun, it's final, irrevocable, and executory. Right? So yun yung ibig sabihin ng number 14. Non-impairment of the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court to review tax cases. May powers sa Supreme Court to decide to review tax cases. Number 15. Appropriation, revenue tariff bills must originate from House of Representatives, but the Senate may propose or concur with amendments. Okay. So from House, pupunta ng Senate. Ano yung legislative process natin? Pag may House version ka, pag napasa na sa House yan, pupunta sa Senate. Pag pumasa sa Senate yan, meron kang bicameral committee, dadali mo sa President for veto or for signing of bill into law. Ang ibig sabihin niya ng class, appropriation, revenue tariff bills, lahat ng bills, okay, dapat mag-originate muna sa House of Representatives. Ibig sabihin lang yan, dapat i-follow yung legislative process that we discussed earlier. Number 16, the President shall have the power to veto any particular items in an appropriation, revenue, or bill. So in relation to number 15, alam natin class na si President meron siyang veto power. Alright? So yung veto power na yun, yung example ko earlier, yung sa VAT, na house and lot na 2 million, yung threshold, gusto ng mga lawmakers natin gawing 4.2 million yun. Vinito ni President yun. So hindi siya naging effective. Alright? Ibig sabihin, na-retain yung 2 million. Number 17, alam natin yung number 17 na yan. LGUs can create its own source of revenues. Ayan. Because of the local government code. So na-discuss natin yan. Sa LGUs, it's a delegated power. Sa national government, it's an inherent power. Ayan. Okay, so 1 to 17, lahat yan, constitutional limitations. Again, lahat po class, explicitly makikita nyo sa Constitution. Yung 5 na to, hindi nyo makikita sa Constitution, that's why you call it inherent. Again, yung technique for this one, ito lang tandaan nyo. Okay, so ito, familiar lang kayo dapat dyan. Right? Pag hindi inherent, constitutional. Let's go to number 32. Non-payment of tax and debt is a ground for imprisonment. False. Okay, ganito yan. Ano yung true dito? Non-payment of tax is a ground for imprisonment. Correct yun, pag ganun. Non-payment of debt is not a ground. Okay? Actually, pag di ka nagbayad ng debt mo, bawal ka may-imprison doon. Okay? Pag di ka nagbayad ng utang mo, hindi yan for imprisonment. Okay? Tanda mo yun. So, kaya siya mali because dapat to, non-payment of poll tax and debt is not a ground for imprisonment. Okay? So, din nga, which of the following is correct? Non-payment of tax and debt is a ground for imprisonment. Okay? Ulitin ko. False yun. Bakit, sir? Ito yung rule. Non-payment of tax is a ground for imprisonment. Yun dapat para correct yan. Okay? Or, kaya nagpamali yan kasi may nakalagay and debt. Because non-payment of debt is not a ground for imprisonment. Alright? Also, non-payment of poll tax is not a ground for imprisonment. That's why mali yung letter A. The power to tax may include the power to destroy. Actually, correct yan class. Bakit, sir? If yung taxation ginamit mo, okay, together with police power, okay, it's what we call power to destroy. Ang maganda example niyan is, I don't know if familiar kayo dito sa Oplan Candado. Ayan, Oplan Candado. Yung Oplan Candado class, ganito yan. May mga instances wherein si BIR, meron siyang right para i-close yung business mo until bayaran mo yung correct taxes. Actually, may mga threshold din eh. For example, yung sales mo in-understate mo by 30%, at least 30%. Ayan, pwede kay kandado ni BIR, alright? Or for example, hindi ka nag-i-issue ng mga receipts, ng official receipts. Also, hindi ka nag-register kay BIR tapos nag-operate ka. Ayan, yung mga instances na yun, pwedeng i-implement yung Oplan Candado na yan, wherein i-close down yung business mo until mag-operate ka, until bayaran mo yung correct taxes. Right? Kaya yung B is correct. B yung sagot dyan. C, provisions in the Constitution are grants. Mali, hindi yan grants. These are limitations of power. That's why mali yung C. Letter D, lands and buildings being actually, directly, and exclusively used for religious, charitable, yung mga churches, purposes by churches and charitable institutions are exempt from income and property taxes. Okay sana, kaya lang may nakalagay na income. Hindi. Pag mga religious na yan, exempt sila sa property taxes. Yung nagpamali dyan, nakalagay income and property. Should be only property taxes. False yung dog. Boy is the correct answer for number 32. 33. They restrict the exercise of the power of taxation, although they are not embodied in the Constitution. Pag wala sa Constitution, inherent limitations, letter C for number 33. Those restrictions on the exercise of the power of taxation that are found in the Constitution, constitutional limitations, letter D for number 34. 35. Which of the following is not correct? A. Taxes may be imposed to raise revenues or to provide disincentives to certain activities. Correct yan. Example ko dito kanina yung sin tax. Okay? To discourage yung consumption ng mga unhealthy or sinful products such as cigarettes, alcoholic drinks. Actually, kasama din dyan yung mga sweetened beverages. Napansin nyo, class, nagmahal na rin yung mga sodas, yung mga soft drinks. Ayan. So, yun yung example ng disincentives to certain activities. Correct yan. B. The state can have the power of taxation even if the Constitution does not explicitly give it the power to tax. Yes, because the power of taxation is an inherent power of the state. Letter C. For the exercise of the power of taxation, the state can tax anything at any time. That's correct. Okay? That's also correct. Subject to inherent and constitutional limitations. Letter D. The provisions of taxation in the Philippine Constitution are grants of power. False. Limitations of power. Answer for number 35 is dog. Number 36, this is an inherent limitation. Ayan, mga ganyan usually tinatanong. Which of the following is not a constitutional limitation? Which of the following is an inherent limitation? So, alin daw dito yung inherent limitation? Rule on uniformity and equity? Hindi. Uniformity or equity or equality, nasa constitutional yan. B, due process of law is constitutional. Non-impairment of jurisdiction of the Supreme Court in tax cases, constitutional. Tax must be for public purpose. Dog is the answer for number 36. So, again, ito na tatanda mo, hindi mo na yan. 37, this is a constitutional limitation. Tax laws must be applied within territorial jurisdiction. Okay? Ang tawag natin dyan is the International Committee. Inherent limitation. Exemption of government is also inherent. No appropriation of public money for religious purposes. Separation of church and state. Constitutional limitation. Letter C for number 37. Power to tax cannot be delegated. Non-delegability of taxing power. Inherent limitation. 38. A tax must be imposed for public purpose. Which of the following is not a public purpose? National defense, public purpose. Public education, public purpose. Improvement of sugar and coconut industries, public purpose. Improvement of a subdivision road, private purpose. Alright? Hindi naman affected yung general public sa subdivision. Tama? Very selected individuals yun. So, dog is the answer. 39. Which of the following is incorrect? A. No person shall be imprisoned for non-payment of debt or non-payment of taxes. False. Paano maging correct yan? Ganito yan, class. Para maging correct yung A, no person shall be imprisoned for non-payment of debt or non-payment of poll tax. Okay? So, A na yung sagot natin sa 39. B. The passage of laws granting tax exemption. Saan yun? Tax exemption. Ito. Require the concurrence by majority of all the members. Correct. C. The Supreme Court's jurisdiction over tax cases cannot be impaired. Correct. The revenues and assets of non-stock, educational institutions, and donations are exempted from taxes and duties. So, correct. Taxes, duties, yung taxes yan, yung property tax and income tax. Correct yan. A is incorrect. Alright? So, yan. I think meron pang ibang tanong about inherent and constitutional limitations. But let's proceed to our next, yung next naman nating class is, erase natin to. Okay. Yung next natin is about other charges and fees. Alright? Discuss natin yun. Aside from taxes, the taxpayers or the citizens of the Philippines also pay the following. So, lagyan natin dito, other charges and fees. Right? So, meron tayong, number 1, toll. Okay? So, pag sinabi mong toll, basically, ayan, charge for the cost and maintenance of the property used. Well, ang pinaka-common example natin is pag dumadaan tayo ng mga expressways, NLEX, SLEX, Skyway, SCTEX, nagbabayad tayo ng toll. Alright? So, yung di-discuss natin, class, these are items aside from tax. Ito rin yung normally binabayaran ng mga taxpayers. Number 1 is toll. Number 2 is penalty. So, for example, class, nag-commit ng crime. Ayan. So, pag crime kasi, possible din na may mga civil damages ka. Ibig sabihin, kailangan mo rin magbayad ng penalty. Ayan. Yan ang example of penalty. Number 3 is, okay, what we call special assessment. Yung special assessment, class, actually, this is a form of tax levied on land. Alright? Sir, kailan nagkakaroon ng special assessment? For example, class, nagkaroon ng public improvements dun sa lugar nyo. Okay? Naglagay ng highway. Yung kanina example natin ng highway, yung eminent domain. Nadaanan yung lupa nyo, nadaanan. Ito hindi, sa tabi lang ng lupa nyo. Okay? Nandun pa rin kayo, hindi nadaanan. So because of the highway, nagkaroon ng public improvement, tumaas yung value nung lupa nyo doon, ng land nyo. You're liable to pay special assessment tax. Again, this is levied only on land because of the benefits derived from public improvements. Ang tawag natin doon is special assessment. We also have what we call license fee. Ang maganda example of license fee is the exercise of police power. Kailangan magbayad ng business permit, kailangan magbayad ng driver's license, and so on and so forth. Self-explanatory license fee. Number 5 is customs duties / customs fees o yung mga tariffs. Ayan. So aside from tax, binabayaran natin siya. So ito naman class, applicable naman yan for importation and exportation. Right? Okay. Next is debt. Debt is basically arising from contracts. No? Well, natin sa accounting, ito yung mga liabilities. For example, meron kang bank loan. Ayan. Meron kang contract with a bank. Nag-loan ka, naka-receive ka ng cash. So, syempre, may responsibility ka to pay your debt, to pay interest and principal. Pwedeng debt mo with a supplier. Nag-deliver ng goods sa supplier, in exchange, meron kang obligation to pay the supplier. We call it debt. And number 7 is, we also have yung what we call subsidy. Okay? So, ito yung government aid. Okay? In this case naman, ang pinakamagandang example nito, during the pandemic, di ba, nagbibigay ng ayuda yung government? Okay? Ayan. It's an example of subsidy. Ayan. So, if you look at the reference books, usually i-discuss yung mga other charges and fees. And bigyan ko kayo ng overview. Alright? So, apply natin yan dito sa exercises natin. Let's go to number 40. Toll as distinguished from tax. Ano yung toll? Ayan. Binabayad natin sa mga expressways. For example, demand of sovereignty, false. Tax yun. Letter A is tax. Imposed by government, false. Actually, yung mga expressways na yan, most of them owned by a private corporation. So, for example, NLEX owned siya by Metro Pacific. Alright? So, mali yung B. Imposed by government only, tax yun. Okay, tax yung B. C, amount is based on the cost of construction of public improvement. That's correct. Okay? Yung cost of yung amount na yun, syempre, it depends kung how much yung nagastos ng mga gumawa na yan, ng mga expressways. C yung sagot natin for 40. Letter D, paid for the support of the government. Tax yung letter D. Alright? Number 41. So C yung sagot sa 40. Number 41, all of the following except one are characteristics of toll. A, demand of proprietorship or demand of ownership. That's a characteristic of toll. B, compensation for the use of another's property. Yes. May be imposed by private individuals. Yes. Levied for the support of the government. False. Yung D is for tax naman. One of the following is not a characteristic of a special assessment. A, it has special application only to a particular time and place. Correct. It is levied only on land. Correct. May be levied on business. False. Based wholly on benefits. Yes. Benefits na derived mo from public improvements. 42 is letter C. 43. Okay, so babalikan natin to. Pero let's go to number 43. For number 43 onwards, pag-aaralan naman natin class dyan yung classification of taxes. Right? So meron tayong different classifications. So it's important na tanungin natin yung mga usual na tinatanong sa general principles. Okay? So ayan. So yung mga sinusulat ko sa board class, actually nasa G-sheets na rin yan. Kaya ako lang sinusulat sa board para lang mas ma-highlight ko sa inyo yung mga important items. Alright? Punta tayo sa classification of taxes. Tingnan muna natin class as to, number 1 is as to subject matter. Meron tayong 3. We have what we call personal tax, we have property tax, and we have excise tax. Okay, as to subject matter, meron tayong tatlo. Personal, property, or excise. Pag sinabi mong personal tax, imposed on individuals. Right? Ang pinakamaganda example nito class, yung kanina, yung sinabi kong yung cedula. Cedula or yung community tax or yung poll tax. Okay? Yung best example ng personal, okay? So, tayo yung nagbabayad niya, individuals yung nagbabayad niya, alright? So, yun yung personal tax. When you say property tax, obviously, imposed on properties, real or personal properties. Ang maganda example nito, yung real property tax and yung capital gains tax. Ayan, property taxes yan. Ngayon class, so kung meron kang personal tax and you have property tax, when you say excise tax, ano siya, umbrella term siya, basta hindi personal and property tax, ang tawag natin doon is excise tax. Get it? Okay. Now, yung excise tax, basically class, is tax on the exercise of rights and privileges. Okay? Examples nito class, yung income tax, right? So tax on profession, exercise of profession, ano pa, estate tax, donors tax. Sa estate kasi sa donors, next time aralin natin lahat yan, yun naman yung right to transfer properties. Nagbabayad ka ng tawag doon excise tax. What else? Yung VAT, okay? Right to operate in business. Ayan. So, yan yung mga examples natin ng excise tax. So, class, tandaan nyo lang, pag as to subject matter, again, meron kang personal tax, property tax, yung umbrella term natin, basta hindi property and personal, you call it excise tax. Number 2, as to burden. As to burden, may dalawa tayo. We call it direct tax and indirect tax. So, ganito lang class yung difference yan. If the taxpayer is both liable and then siya din yung nagbayad, ang tawag natin dyan, direct tax. If liable yung taxpayer pero hindi siya yung nagbayad, we call it indirect tax. Alright? So, ano examples of direct tax? Example yan, income tax. Alright? Estate donors. Ayan. Kasi ikaw yung liable, ikaw din yung nagbayad. Ang maganda example naman ng indirect tax, yung business taxes. For example, VAT and other percentage tax. So, class, lahat yan, i-discuss natin yan. May-mention ko na taxes na yan. Examples lang yan, pero extensively, i-discuss natin isa-isa yan. Okay, so pag VAT, ganito yung class, di ba? Pag pumunta ka ng convenience store, for example, punta ka ng mini-stop, bumili ka sa mini-stop, kung makikita mo doon, nakalagay sa receipt, merong VAT na 12%. Or punta ka ng Starbucks, pumunta ka ng coffee shop, may 12% na VAT doon. Sino nagbabayad? Ikaw. Pero sino yung liable doon? Yung seller, yung convenience store. Alright? So, yung convenience store yung liable, pero pinapass on sa atin, okay? That's what we call indirect tax. Got it? Okay, next. As to taxing authority. Ayan, taxing authority. Dalawa yan. Pwedeng national tax or local tax. So, yung national tax, ang nag-i-impose niyan, yung Congress, tama? Legislature. Yung local tax, ang nag-i-impose niyan, yung LGUs, the local government units. Example of national tax, income tax, okay? Estate tax, donors tax, VAT, ano pa? OPT, excise tax, documentary stamp tax, and so on and so forth. Actually, yung di-discuss natin class of all throughout the review, mostly national tax yan. Meron na tayong isang session for local tax. Sa local tax, di-discuss natin dyan class yung real property tax, alright? Professional tax, etc. Ayan. Okay? Yan yung national tax and local tax. Let's go to number 4, as to amount. As to amount, meron tayong two types. We have specific tax, okay, and ad valorem. Kapag pag specific tax, okay, peso amount yan. Okay, this is based on volume, weight, and quantity. Okay? Ang pinakamagandang example dito class is specific tax. For example, yung tax on cigarettes and liquors. For example, sa cigarette per pack. Okay? For example, 20 pesos per pack of cigarette. Okay? Per gasoline naman, let's say 10 pesos per liter of gasoline. Pag peso amount, specific yun. Okay? Kapag naman sinabing ad valorem, based on value. Alright? Based on value, for example, class, percentage yan. Usually percentage. For example, income tax, VAT, estate, ayan, ad valorem yan. Based on value. For example, VAT. Pag ang sales mo, ang value ng sales mo, 1 million, again, 120,000 yung VAT mo doon. Tama? Ad valorem yun. Percentage of the amount. Alright? So, based on value. Unlike itong specific, based on, for example, per liter, okay, per pack of cigarette, and so on and so forth. Ayan. So, again, peso amount, specific, percentage naman, ad valorem. Last one. Number 5. As to graduation or rate, meron tayong 3. Okay? Number 1, proportional. Number 2, progressive. And number 3 is regressive. Ayan. Proportional, progressive, and regressive. Pag sinabi mong proportional, this is flat rate. Ang maganda example dyan, VAT. Yung VAT natin is 12% flat rate yan. Yung other percentage tax natin, now it's 1%. Okay? And then yung estate tax natin, it's 6%. Ang tawag natin dyan is proportional. Right? Pag sinabi mong progressive, as the tax base increases, the tax rate also increases. Right? So again, yung example natin pag progressive system of taxation is yung graduated tax table for individuals. Habang tumataas yung income mo or the tax base, tumataas yung tax rate mo. Right? Pag regressive naman class, as the tax base decreases, your tax rate increases. So yung regressive, actually pwede mo na i-ignore yan because wala tayong ganyan in the Philippines. So meron lang tayo proportional and progressive. Okay, so ayan. Classification of taxes. Let's go to number 43. Tax imposed by the national government and as effective within the entire jurisdiction, national tax, letter A. Number 44, taxes imposed by political subdivision of the state and is effective only within the territorial boundaries, yan yung LGU or local tax, letter B. Number 45, a tax that is imposed upon a person who is directly bound to pay it. Okay, ikaw yung liable, ikaw yung nagbayad, direct tax, letter A. Forms part of the purchase price of the commodity or service passed on to customers. Ikaw yung liable pero pinabayad mo sa customer. Passed on to customers. Indirect tax, letter B. Indirect tax. Schedular system of income taxation. So class, pag sinabi mong schedular system, ito rin siya, yung progressive tax system. Okay? Yung tax table for individuals. A. All types of income are added together to arrive at gross income. No. Separate graduated rates are imposed on different types of income. Yes. So if you look yung sa individuals, 0 to 250,000, 0%. 250 to 400, 20% in excess of 250. 400 to 800, 30,000 plus 25% in excess of 400, and so on and so forth. Ang tawag natin dito, class, schedular system of taxation, letter B. Okay? Number 48, in case of conflict between tax laws and GAAP or the accounting standards, sino magpe-prevail dyan? Siyempre yung tax laws, letter C. Tax laws shall prevail over GAAP. Ganito lang isipin yung class. For tax purposes, tax laws yung gagamitin mo. For accounting purposes, let's say preparation of financial statements, syempre yung accounting laws naman yung gagamitin mo, yung GAAP naman. So depende kung saan mo i-apply yung laws na yan. So syempre for tax purposes, preparation of ITR, tax laws yung gagamitin natin, letter C. Tax as distinguished from license fee. Balik tayo dito. Okay, license fee. Yung license fee, yan yung business permit, driver's license, and so on. Ano daw yung difference sa tax? A, non-payment does not necessarily render the business illegal. Actually, correct yan. Pag hindi ka nagbayad ng tax, legal pa rin yung business mo. Pag hindi ka nagbayad ng business permit, which is a license fee, illegal yung business mo. Letter A yung sagot natin dyan. B, a regulatory measure, yes, for license fee. Imposed in the exercise of police power, yes, license fee. Limited to cover cost of regulation, license fee. A is tax. Number 50, tax imposed upon performance of an act, enjoyment of privilege, or engaging in occupation, excise tax. Letter C. So, enjoyment of privilege, yung privilege mo to be employed, okay, to render services, income tax yun, tama? And then, ayan, performance of an act, enjoyment of privilege, yung right mo to transfer properties, estate and donors tax. Ang tawag natin dyan, excise tax. Again, basta hindi personal, okay, iba pa tawag sa personal, yun nasa letter A, personal, poll, or capitation. If it's not personal or property, we call it excise tax. Which of the following is not an example of excise tax? A, transfer tax, yes. B, sales tax, yes. C, real property tax, no. Property tax yun. C yung answer natin for number 51. D, income tax, yes. 52, an example of property tax is A, additional community tax. Pag community tax, it's an excise tax. Pag community tax, it's a personal tax, alright? B, real estate tax, that's property tax. B yung sagot natin dyan. Estate tax on inherited, personal, as well as real properties, and donors tax. Yung C and D are excise taxes. Alright? So yung A is personal, B is property, C and D are excise taxes. So boy yung sagot sa 52. Number 53, tax which imposes a specific sum by head or number or by standards of weight, measurement, volume, weight, quantity, which requires no assessment. Okay? Hindi mo malaman yung value. For example, 10 pesos per liter of gasoline, okay? 6 pesos per liter of diesel. O cigarettes naman, let's say 50 pesos per pack. Ang tawag natin doon is specific taxes. Letter B. Tax of a fixed proportion of the value of the property with respect to which the tax is assessed. Ad valorem naman yan. Pag kailangan mo ng value, ad valorem yung tawag doon. Kaya valorem, okay? Ad valorem is usually a percentage. Example natin dyan, income tax, VAT, estate tax. The following are kinds of taxes as to graduation. Which one is not digressive? Uniform, progressive, and regressive and progressive. Actually, yung digressive, ano rin yung class, yung digressive, it's also as to graduation. Hindi ko din-discuss kasi hindi naman siya important sa atin. Sagot sa number 55 class is uniform. Because yung uniform is as to rate. Okay? Technically, yung as to graduation, yung dalawa lang na yan. Progressive and regressive. Okay? Yung uniform, which is yung proportional, is as to rate, not as to graduation. Okay? B yung sagot natin for number 55. Okay? Number 56, tax based on a fixed percentage of the amount of property, income, or other basis to be taxed. Okay, it's proportional. Letter B for number 56. Percentage and proportional. Flat rate. Okay. Tax where the rate decreases as the tax base increases. Ito, yung regressive. And again, regressive system of taxation does not apply here in the Philippines. C for number 57. 58, tax where the rate increases as the tax base increases. We call it progressive. Letter A. VAT is an example of proportional tax. Again, pag proportional, flat rate yan. VAT, letter D, proportional tax. Tax of a fixed amount imposed among all persons residing within a specified territory without regard to their property, occupation, or they may be engaged. Personal poll or capitation, letter A for number 60. Personal tax yan. Ang magandang example dyan is the community tax or residence tax or what we call cedula, letter A. 61. Tax imposed on personal or real property in relation to its value, property tax, letter B. Okay? Ayan, may naligaw na inherent limitation dito. Number 62. One of the following is not an inherent limitation. International committee, yes. Inherent yan. Double taxation, no. Non-delegation, yes. Territoriality, yes. Double taxation is not an inherent limitation. So, boy yung sagot natin for number 62. Speaking of double taxation, iyan naman yung i-discuss natin. So, konti na lang class, matapos na tayo. Okay. Let's discuss double taxation. Alright. So, tingnan natin. Double taxation. Okay. So when you say double taxation, yung same taxpayer, okay, is taxed twice. Is taxed twice with the same object. Alright? Same type of tax. Same purpose. Okay? Same taxing jurisdiction. Ano yung taxing jurisdiction? Ito yun, yung national tax and yung local tax natin. Or yung national government and the local government. And then, same tax period. Ayan. Ang tawag natin dyan, class, is double taxation. Alright? Twice kang tinax, basically. Meron tayong two types of double taxation. Number one is direct double taxation. And number two is indirect double taxation. So, ganito lang yung class. Pag sinabi mong direct double taxation, present lahat yan. Okay? Lahat ng elements na yan, 100% present, direct double taxation. If may one or more elements na absent, we call it indirect double taxation. And yung direct double taxation, actually class, this violates the constitutional limitations. Okay? In particular, yung yung second and third, yung equality and uniformity. Okay? Especially equality. So it's violative of our constitution, yung direct double taxation. But take note, this is not explicitly prohibited. Not explicitly prohibited. Wala kang makikita sa constitution na nakalagay doon na direct double taxation is not allowed. Hindi. Though it's a violation of equality and uniformity. Alright? So again, walang explicit prohibition for direct double taxation, but it is highly discouraged. Alright? Highly discouraged. Bigyan kita ng example. For example, class, sabihin ni BIR, sige, magbayad ka ng 12% VAT monthly. Okay? And then, magbayad ka din ng 5% VAT sa annual sales mo. Okay? So, monthly, nagbabayad ka na ng VAT. And then, magko-compute ka pa ng annual, same din yung, ibig sabihin, kung sales mo dito, nag-VAT ka na ng 12%. Nag-VAT ka na naman dito sa annual sales mo. That's a direct double taxation. Alright? So, again, it is highly discouraged under our law. Pag sinabi mo namang indirect double taxation, again, may absent dyan. Bibigyan ko ng example. For example, kasi yung isang corporation, right? Mag-earn niya ng income, tama? Ngayon, yung income niyan will be subject to corporate tax. Tama? Corporate income tax. Tama? Let's say it's now 25%. Okay? So, si corporation, meron siyang revenues, expenses, meron siyang taxable income, multiplied by 25%, yun yung income tax niya. Tama? Ngayon, yung income tax na yun, babayaran ni corporation yun dun sa BIR. Now, pag nag-declare ng dividends si corporation to the shareholders, yung dividends na yan, subject to final tax, let's say 10%. So dito, subjected ka sa 25%. Tapos, subjected ka ulit ng 10%. Eh di ba yung dividends galing sa income yun? So, ibig sabihin, meron kang double taxation. But in that case, ang tawag natin dyan, indirect double taxation. And this one is not prohibited. Okay, allowed yan, yung indirect double taxation. So, ayan. Because, unang-una, magkaiba yung object mo. Okay? Actually, same object because income yan. Magkaiba yung tax mo. Okay? This one is a 25% corporate tax. Ito naman is a form of final tax. And then, I think, iba din yung purpose nito because this one, you're taxing the income of the corporation itself. Yung corporation yung nag-earn yan. Ito naman, earnings naman to ng shareholders. Alright? Anyway, so this is a good example of indirect double taxation. Let's go to, anong number tayo? Number 63. 63, the following constitute double taxation except one. Both taxes are imposed the same amount. Actually, hindi same amount. Okay? Wala naman yung same amount dito. Same purpose, taxing authority. Okay? or taxing jurisdiction, and same person or same object. So wala yung same amount. Letter A is except A, 63. Which of the following constitutes an objectionable double taxation? Pag sa yung objectionable, this is the direct double taxation. Alin daw dito yung direct double taxation? A license fee and a tax imposed on the same business or occupation. A is not a double taxation. Una, yung license fee is a different purpose. Okay? It's a different type. Tama? License fee is for permit. Okay? While yung tax, well, iba yun. Iba yung una-una, yung license fee, exercise of police power yun. Yung tax naman is exercise of power of taxation. And they are different purpose yun and different type of tax. Okay? So A is not a double taxation. B, a 20% final withholding tax on interest income on bank deposit and 5% gross receipts tax on banks is a direct duplicate taxation. Actually, yung letter B na yan is an indirect double taxation. Because class, yung 20%, ang tinataxan mo doon is the interest income itself. Alright? Which is actually different objects sila. Alright? While yung tinataksan mo doon, okay, yung tinataksan mo sa interest income, ang tinataksan mo is the depositor. Kaya class, kapag yung pansin mo yung deposit mo sa bangko, pag nag-earn ng interest yun, net of tax yun. Net of 20% tax. Ngayon, yung tinataksan mo naman sa 5% gross receipts tax, yung bank itself, yung kinita ng bangko. Got it? Okay, so different, pwede mo sabihin na different objects yan for letter B. Letter C, persons engaged in leasing or selling real property are subject to real estate dealer's tax and their sales are also subject to 12% VAT. Okay, now, yung isa, okay, persons engaged in leasing or selling real property are subject to real estate dealer's tax and their sales are also subject to 12% VAT. Actually, class, yung real estate dealer's tax, next time, aralin natin yan, pero it's a type of local tax. While yung VAT naman, we know, it's an example of national tax. So ito yung, meron siyang different taxing jurisdiction. That's why letter C is actually allowed, right? Letter D, ito yung hindi allowed. Tax of 1% is imposed on bank reserve deficiency while a penalty of 1/10 of 1% is also imposed as a consequence of such reserve deficiency. So both sila, tinaksan yung reserve deficiency. Same object, same type of tax, same purpose, same taxing jurisdiction, and same tax period. Pag present yan, in this case, same yung object mo, parehong reserve deficiency, and yung 1%, yun din yung basis of penalty na 1/10. This is an objectionable double taxation. Letter D is an example of direct double taxation. 65, malapit na tayo. I think 85 items lang to. 65, which of the following is correct? A, indirect double taxation violates the Constitution. False. Okay? Ang nag-violate ng Constitution is the direct double taxation. B, there is direct double taxation in taxing the income of the corporation and again, subject the portion of that income declared as dividends. So, yung example ko kanina. Okay? Actually, indirect double taxation naman yan. Kaya dito ko siya ginawang example. False yung B. Indirect double taxation is legal as long as there is no violation of equal protection and uniformity. That's correct. Alright? Legal yung indirect double taxation. It's very common. C is the answer for 65. Alright. Number 66. Next na nating class is what we call... Okay, so dito ako maglalagay. Ito na lang. Yung next topic natin class is about, tawag natin dito, escape from taxation. Ayan. Escape from taxation. Okay, we have 6. First one is what we call tax evasion. Ang tawag mo din dito class is dodging. Alright? So tax evasion is illegal. Okay? Pag sabi mo tax evasion is you're understating your sales, overstating your expenses, or pwedeng unrecording of transactions. Okay? Hindi ka nag-record yan para bumaba yung taxable income mo, therefore, bababa yung babayaran by BIR. That's illegal. Ang tawag natin dyan is tax evasion. Number 2 is tax avoidance. We also call this tax minimization. Minimization. Okay? Yung tax minimization, on the other hand, legal naman yan. Alright? So, ibig sabihin nyo ng class, well, yung mga tax strategies na legal. Bigyan ko na example. For example, class, meron kang gusto mag-donate. Magdo-donate ka. Yung donation mo is worth 1 million. 2 donations. Ayan, dalawang donations. Dalawang 500,000. Ngayon, para makatipid ka sa donor's tax, ang gagawin mo dyan, split mo into 2. Year 1 and year 2. Yung isa, i-donate mo December 31. Yung isa naman, i-donate mo, let's say, January 1. Magkaibang year. Alright? Pero 1 day apart lang yan. Because sa donor's tax, ang computation class, yung donation mo, for the year, alright? For the year, minus 250,000, ito yung taxable donation. Ngayon, pag ang ginawa mo class, lahat yan, donate mo ng year 1, ang magiging computation mo dyan, 1 million minus 250, you have 750,000. Multiply mo ng 6%, yun yung donor's tax mo. Pero pag hiniwalay mo siya, 2 taon, 1 day apart lang, ganito yung magiging computation mo. So first mo na donation, 500 minus 250, 250 times 6% yung magiging donation mo dyan. Yung second naman, na donation mo na another 500, 500 minus 250, 250 times 6%. Alright? So, dun sa isa nating illustration, isang beses mo lang na minus yung 250 if lahat i-donate mo noong year 1. If you donate yung first donation mo noong year 1, December 31, yung next donation mo, January 1, dalawang beses mo i-utilize yung 250. Because according to the tax code, yung donation mo is, ang computation yung for the year. Alright? Bago mo i-minus sa 250,000. This is an example of tax avoidance. Legal siya to minimize your taxes. Number 3, shifting. Basically, pag shifting, may transfer of taxes, right? Transfer of burden to another. Actually, nag-example na tayo kanina, yung indirect tax, tama? Yung VAT na yan, example natin is VAT or other percentage tax, yung mga business taxes, usually mga businesses, tina-transfer, pinapass on na yan to the customers. Yung customers na nagbabayad yan. Shifting yung tawag natin dyan. And shifting is legal, right? Next is capitalization. Pag sabing capitalization naman, class, this means is taxes are shouldered by the buyer. Okay? Differences sa shifting, actually may question tayo for that. Balikan natin later yung capitalization. Number 5, this is transformation. Okay? Pag sinabing transformation naman, class, the seller or the manufacturer absorbs the tax. Right? So yung kanina, pinapa-shoulder mo sa buyer. Okay? Tataas yung price. Kung gusto mong mababa yung price, ikaw yung mag-shoulder ng tax. Right? But when you say transformation, ang magandang example dyan is, tinataas ni seller or ni manufacturer yung production, and we know in MAS, pag dinadamihan mo yung production, bumababa yung unit cost mo. Right? Unit cost. Actually, meron tayong term dyan. Familiar ba kayo sa term na economies of scale? Ayan yung transformation. Though, hindi mo pinapapasa kay customer yung tax, ikaw mag-absorb para mababa pa rin yung price, tumaas yung demand sa'yo. But on the other hand, para mas mapababa mo yun, nagpo-produce ka, yung unit cost mo bababa. Alright? Economies of scale. Number 6 is exemption. When you say tax exemption naman, class, ito yung immunity from tax. Right? Ang magandang example nito, yung mga senior citizens and PWDs. Senior citizens and PWDs, as you will learn soon, exempted sila sa VAT. Hindi sila nagbabayad ng VAT. Alright? Yun ang magandang example of exemption. Okay. Let's go to number... so 66, I think, ano pa lang tayo? Actually, starting number 68 to. Sagutan mo natin yung 66 and 67. Okay? About double taxation pa rin yan. Number 66, the usual mode or modes of avoiding occurrence of double taxation is or are. Okay. Go back tayo sa double taxation. Let's go to A. Reciprocal exemption either by law or treaty. Yung letter A na yan, class, ang tawag natin dyan, double taxation agreement. Okay? Next time, aralin natin yan. Bibigyan natin ng overview ngayon. When you say double taxation agreement, yung mga countries, okay, may mga treaties yan. Alright? Or may mga agreements yan. For example, tayo, Philippines, may treaties tayo with different countries to avoid yung double taxation. Okay? Yun yung letter A na yan. Reciprocal exemption. Pag in-exempt natin si Japan, i-exempt din tayo ni Japan for that particular income, alright? For that particular tax. Yun yung reciprocal exemption. Next time, di-discuss natin siya further. Letter B, tax credit and yung deduction of foreign taxes paid. Di-discuss natin yan sa individuals. But basically, ganito yung class. For example ako, nagtrabaho ako sa US, right? Nag-earn ako doon. Siyempre, nagbayad ako ng tax sa US. Pagbalik ko dito, nagtrabaho dito ako sa Philippines. Same year. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, yung income ko sa US, magbabayad din ako sa Pilipinas. Kasi i-consolidate ko lahat ng income ko. Tama? Dalawang beses ako nagbayad ng tax sa same income. Isa sa US, yung income ko doon, binayaran ko ulit sa Philippines. Ngayon, ina-allow tayo ni BIR na pwede nating, yung binayad mo sa US, pwede mo siya i-claim as tax credit, basically pang minus ng tax mo yun, or deductions. Pwede mo ipambawas. Right? So in short, yung BNC are also ways to avoid yung double taxation. Yung binayad mo sa ibang bansa, pwede mong ibawas yun sa babayaran mo ng tax dito sa Philippines. Ang tawag natin doon, tax credit or deduction, BNC. Dog yung sagot sa 66. Okay, dog. 67, which is not a, lagay mo dyan direct, which is not a direct double taxation. Okay? Which is not a direct double taxation. A lessor of property pays real estate tax and income tax. Different types of taxes yan. So, hindi yan direct double taxation. A is indirect. B, imposition of tax on finished goods and raw materials. Indirect yan because different object. Yung isa finished goods, yung isa raw materials. C, imposition of tax on corporate and shareholders. Indirect double taxation yan. So, answer dito is all of the above. So, kasi bihin mo yung tanong ha, lagay mo dyan, which is not a direct double taxation. A, B, and C are all examples of indirect double taxation. Okay, balik na tayo dito. Transfer of the tax burden by one on whom the tax is assessed to another. Shifting. Magandang example is VAT. Letter A is the answer for number 68. Which of the following is not a scheme of shifting? Alin daw dito yung hindi shifting? A. the manufacturer transfers the tax to the consumer. Yes. B, the purchaser asks for a discount or refuses to buy at a regular price unless it is reduced by the amount equal to the tax he will pay. Yes. So, ibig sabihin, before ka mag-discount, bayaran mo na ni customer yung tax. Letter C, changing the terms of the sale like FOB shipping point in the Philippines to FOB destination abroad so that the title passes abroad instead in the Philippines. This is a good tax strategy. Ang tawag natin dyan is tax avoidance or tax minimization. This is legal. Okay? Letter C is not shifting. Kaya sagot natin dito is letter C. The manufacturer transferred the sales to the distributor, then in turn to the wholesaler, in turn to the retailer, and finally the consumer. Shifting. A, B, and D are shifting. Letter C is tax avoidance. Answer natin is letter C. Number 70. The reduction in the selling price of income-producing property by an amount equal to the capitalized value of the future taxes that may be paid by the purchaser. Ang tawag natin dyan, class, is capitalization. Okay? Pag sinabi mong capitalization, ganito yan. So, for example, nagbenta ka ng property. Alright? For example, vatable yung property na yan. Illustrate ko sa yung capitalization. Nagbenta ka ng property, ikaw si seller, okay, ito si buyer. So, ang gagawin mo, since vatable siya, yung selling price, ibababa mo. Okay? Para makatipid ka sa tax. Since mababa yung selling price, mababa yung VAT mo. Got it? Ngayon, si buyer, pag receive niya ng property, pag binenta niya siya at its fair market value, alright? Well, tataas yung VAT niya. Nakuha mo yun? Taas yung selling price, tataas yung VAT. So, the reduction in the selling price of income-producing property by an amount equal to the capitalist value of future taxes, in this case yung VAT, that may be paid by the purchaser, ang magbabayad niyan eventually, si buyer or si purchaser, ang tawag natin doon is capitalization, letter B. Boy. 71. The method by which the manufacturer or producer upon whom the tax is imposed pays the tax and strives to recover such expense through lower cost production without sacrificing the quality. Transformation, letter C, or economies of scale. Letter C, transformation. The grant of immunity to particular persons or corporation or to persons or corporations of a particular class. Grant of immunity, immunity from tax, we call it tax exemption, letter A. Example, senior citizens, PWDs, exempted sila sa VAT. Another example, yung mga PEZA registered companies, meron silang 5 to 7 years na income tax holiday. Right? Number 73 and number 74, tingnan natin. 73, in every case of doubt, tax statutes are construed. When you say tax statutes, yun yung tax laws natin. And then, number 74 naman, in every case of doubt, tax exemptions are construed. Okay. Sagot sa number 73. Tax statutes are construed, letter C, strictly against the government and liberally in favor of the taxpayer. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, class, yung tax laws na yan, yung interpretation yan, okay, or yung burden of proof niyan is on the government, strictly against the government. When it comes to exemptions naman, yung burden of proof niyan is liberally in favor of the government and strictly against the taxpayer. Sagot sa number 73 is letter C, and answer for number 74 is letter dog. Okay. Number 75, the exploitation by a taxpayer of legal, permissible alternative tax rates or methods of assessing taxable property. Tax minimization, letter C, tax avoidance. The use of illegal or fraudulent means to avoid or defeat payment of tax. Tax evasion, letter D, or tax dodging, dog. Uy, malapit na, sir. Sa wakas. 77, which of the following statements constitutes tax avoidance? Saan yung tax avoidance? Ito, tax minimization. A, deliberate failure of taxpayer to pay taxes, tax evasion. B, connotes fraud through the use of pretenses and forbidden devices, tax evasion. Punishable by law, tax evasion. May be contrary to intent of the legislature but nevertheless does not violate the law. Again, pag tax avoidance, legal yan. Letter D yung sagot natin for number 77. Okay. Punta naman tayo sa number 78. Okay, different subtopic naman to for number 78. Let's see. For number 78, ayan, tax laws, sources of tax laws. Tingnan natin. Sources of tax laws. Okay. So, ibig sabihin, saan ba nakukuha natin yung mga tax laws na yan? Di ba? Meron tayong legislative process kanina. Meron tayong House of Representatives, Senate, may bicameral tayo, may President. Now, aside from that, ito pa yung sources of tax laws natin. Number 1 is the Constitution. Okay? Ang magandang example nito, yung Local Government Code. Di ba? Yung LGUs, nagkaroon sila ng power of taxation, delegated power, is because of the Constitution. The Constitution created the Local Government Code. Okay. Second is the tax code, alright? Which is the NIRC, National Internal Revenue Code. NIRC, inamend na yan ng train, inamend ng create law. Actually, dun sa Google Sheets natin class, yung sa individuals, yung unang-unang makikita dyan is the link to the tax code, alright? So yan. Yan yung another source of tax law. Number 3, presidential decrees, right? Statutes or executive orders, ayan, mababasa nyo yung mga yan. So class, ang ibig sabihin lang yan, yung presidential decrees, statutes, executive orders, kaya presidential yan, right? And executive, ibig sabihin lang, tandaan mo lang class, issued by the president yan. Okay? Issued by the president of the Philippines. Ayan, pwede rin yan source of tax laws. Presidential decrees, statutes, and executive orders. Number 4 is the tax treaties. Example ko kanina dito class, yung double taxation agreement. Again, may mga treaties tayo with different countries, okay, as to exemption. Tax treaties yan. Number 5 is court decisions. Especially yung mga decisions of, let's say, Supreme Court. Okay? So, di ba, sabi ko kanina, yung Supreme Court, siya yung bahala mag-review ng tax cases, yung magde-decide sa tax cases. Usually, mga decisions ng Supreme Court, nagiging basis din yung tax laws natin, or source of tax laws din yan. And number 6, last one is the BIR rulings. BIR rulings, from time to time, again, nag-i-issue si BIR na revenue regulations, okay? Revenue, RMCs or Revenue Memorandum Circulars, Revenue Memorandum Orders or RMOs, etc. So class, isipin nyo lang, yung mga RRs na yan, RMCs and RMOs, basically yan yung interpretation. Alright? Yan yung guide sa mga taxpayers. Alright? Usually, nagre-request yung taxpayer. For example, kasi yung CREATE. Yung CREATE, nung ginawang batas yan, may mga certain taxpayers na nag-request ng mga RRs na ganyan, yung mga BIR rulings, para i-explain further, to clarify yung mga confusions, okay? To interpret and mag-serve as guide yan to the taxpayers. Alright? So, yan. Yan yung rules ng RRs, RMs, RMOs. Ganito lang yung class. Isipin nyo, yung tax code, para siyang IFRS. Tama? Ngayon, yung IFRS na yan, may mga interpretations yan. Yung mga IFRIC, okay? Naalala yung mga IFRIC na yan? Yung IFRIC parang ganito yan. Parang BIR rulings yan. Okay? So, yung least source dyan is, kung i-rank mo lahat dyan, kaya ako nilagay sa number 6, yan yung least source of tax law. Which is yung, ayan, number 78, the least source of tax laws is statutes, presidential decrees, okay yan, tax treaties or conventions, ang least din class is revenue regulations. Again, pag mga revenue regulations, basically, yan lang yung guide, no? Yan yung interpretations of the tax laws. Letter D yung sagot natin, or letter C yung sagot natin for 78. All appropriation, revenue tariff bills, authorizing increase in public debt, bills of local application, and private bills shall originate exclusively in, naligaw. Naligaw yung tanong na to because alam natin sa constitutional limitation to class, di ba? So lahat ng appropriations or bills, bago maging batas yan, bills turning into law, dapat mag-originate siya from House of Representatives. Letter B or boy for number 79. Which statement is wrong? Tax laws. A, must originate from House of Representatives, on which same bill the Senate may propose amendments. Yes. B, may originate from the Senate. Yun, mali na. Laging mag-originate siya sa House of Representatives. Boy yung sagot sa 80. C, may have a House version and Senate version. Yes. May be recommended by President of Congress. Yes. Boy yung sagot sa 80. Number 81, which of the following is not considered a step in making a revenue regulation effective? Tandaan mo, class, since least source of tax law yan, alright, hindi na niya kailangan dumaan sa typical legislative process. Okay? A, recommendation by the Commission of Internal Revenue to Secretary of Finance. Kasama yan. B, approval by Secretary of Finance, yes. Legislation by Congress, hindi na kailangan yan. Sa mga RRs ng ganyan, yung mga BIR rulings, hindi mo na kailangan dumaan sa legislative process. House, Senate, BICAM, President, wala nang ganun. Okay? C yan. Publication in newspaper, kailangan yan. Letter C is not considered a step. Uy, ilan na lang? 4 items. Okay, 4 items. Number 82, the Commissioner of Internal Revenue. Last one na to, class. No? So please bear with me. Actually, sinadya ko talaga na comprehensive yung general principles na discussion natin. No? Because hindi siya masyadong nadi-discuss, usually mabilisan lang. So gusto ko extensive yung discussion natin. Now, si BIR, ang head niyan is what we call Commissioner or the CIR, Commissioner of Internal Revenue. Now, ito class yung organizational structure of the BIR. Okay? Org structure. Para familiar kayo. Actually, okay din class kung ina-navigate nyo yung BIR website. So ito, nasa BIR website lang to. Ito mga rulings na yan. RRs, RMDs, RMOs, pwede ka mag-navigate sa BIR website. Marami ka matutunan doon. Basically, yung BIR is headed by its executive, yung Commissioner of Internal Revenue. And we know, yung Commissioner na yan, ang nag-appoint dyan, si President. Okay? Yung cabinet member. Okay? Cabinet member. Commissioner of Internal Revenue. Under Commissioner of Internal Revenue, meron kang 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay? Ang tawag natin dito, class, they are the Deputy Commissioners. Deputy Commissioners. May 4 yan. Merong Operations Group, Ops na lang, Operations Group. You have the Legal Group. Okay? We have the Information System Group. And we have the Resource Management Group. Resource Management Group. Okay, so under the Commissioner of Internal Revenue or the CIR, meron tayong 4 na Deputy Commissioners. Right? 4 Deputy Commissioners. Ngayon, ito lang i-highlight natin yung Operations Group. Okay? Ito yung relevant for our purposes. Under Operations Group, meron kang tinatawag na Revenue regional offices. Okay? Revenue regional offices. Meron tayong 19 na revenue regional offices. And meron ka under revenue regional offices what we call revenue district offices or RDOs. Alright? RDOs. Meron tayong 124 na RDOs. Okay? So under operations group, merong revenue regional offices, 19 yan. And then meron tayong revenue district offices. So class, di ba sabi ko kanina, si BIR yung in charge administrative function, which is basically yung assessment and collection. To be more specific, sila yon. Sila bahala dun sa assessment, sila bahala sa collection, okay? Sila bahala sa guidance to mga assistants to the taxpayers. Right? So search mo lang yung BIR website, makikita mo lahat ng RDOs doon, mga revenue regional offices and RDOs, makikita mo doon. So ang importance yung class, kung saan kang RDO na BIR registered, dapat doon ka magbayad ng tax. Okay, bigyan natin ng example. For example, yung RDO mo, or for example, yung business mo nakaregister sa Intramuros. Paano mo malalaman kung ano yung RDO number mo? Pupunta ka doon sa BIR website. Actually, yung Intramuros class, ano siya, Revenue Regional 6 siya. Number 6 yan sa Manila. Okay? And then RDO number 33 yan. Okay? RDO 33 yan. Okay? Dapat doon ka magbayad if sa Intramuros yung doon ka BIR registered. For example naman ka, sa Pasay ka. Okay? Yung Pasay naman, Revenue Regional number 8B yan. 8B and then RDO 51 yan. Okay? So ayan, very important yung mga RDO numbers na yan. Right? Kasi doon ka registered, doon ka magbabayad ng tax. Anyway, so this is what you call the organizational structure of BIR. Siyempre, mas malaki pa dyan yan. No? Huwag natin i-highlight yung tatlo na yan. Dito na tayo. Under operations group, we have revenue regional offices, may 19 na offices. And under that, meron tayong RDOs, meron tayong 124 RDOs. Alright, now, kung pupunta ka class sa bottom part of our G-sheets for general principles, nakalagay dyan yung powers of the commissioner or powers of the Commissioner of Internal Revenue. Mabilisan lang, browse lang natin. Number 1, to interpret the provisions of the NIRC, of the tax code. Number 2, meron din siyang power to decide tax cases. Kaya may mga BIR rulings. No? Hindi lang yan court decisions or Supreme Court decisions, meron din tayong BIR rulings. To obtain information and to summon, examine, take testimony of persons, to make assessment, and prescribe additional requirement for tax administration enforcement. Examine tax returns. Again, familiarize yourselves lang. No need to memorize this. Again, familiarity lang. To conduct inventory taking or surveillance. To prescribe presumptive gross sales. So for example, class, hindi ka and may two instances. Pag wala kang resibo, okay, failed to issue receipts, or letter B, the CIR believes that the books do not correctly reflect the declaration in the return, may powers your Commissioner of Internal Revenue to prescribe presumptive gross sales. Ibig sabihin, siya yung mag-estimate kung ano yung sales mo for that period. Okay? Number 8, to terminate tax period. So, ano ibig sabihin terminate tax period? Di ba usually ang bayaran natin April 15, okay? Ngayon, if nangyari dito, yung nag-retire ka from business, what else? Intending to leave the Philippines, intending to remove, hide, or conceal the property, intending to perform any act to obstruct the proceedings, pag ginawa mo yan, pwedeng i-terminate ni BIR yung tax period mo. Ibig sabihin, pag ganun, immediately payable yung taxes. Got it? Yan, yung number 8. Number 9, to prescribe real property values. Well, ito yung para sa property taxes. To compromise tax liabilities of taxpayers. So usually, class, yung compromise na yan, ibig sabihin yan, for example, in-assess ka ni BIR, hindi mo kayang magbayad talaga. Pwede ka mag-enter into compromise with BIR. Magkakasundo kayo kung how much yung amount na kaya mong bayaran. Ability to pay. Number 11, to inquire into bank deposits. So ito class related to sa topic yung RFBT, yung bank secrecy laws. Di ba ang rule natin is, general rule, bawal mo tingnan yung bank account of a depositor. Ito yung exception dyan. Si BIR, pwede niyang tingnan yan only if, two instances. Determination of the gross estate of the decedent. For example, yung namatay, okay, yung decedent, meron siyang bank deposit. Okay, may pera siya sa bangko. Siyempre, paano malaman yun? Dapat, pwede i-check ni BIR yan. Okay? Also, letter B, to substantiate the taxpayer's claim of financial incapacity to pay tax. So again, kanina sabi ko may compromise, di ba? So now, pwede mo i-prove kay BIR na hindi mo talaga kayang bayaran yung tax na yun. Didiscuss natin ito sa remedies. Ang tawag natin doon, class, is yung financial incapacity. Kailangan i-prove mo kay BIR yan. Paano mo i-prove kay BIR? Magkakaroon si BIR ng right to inspect your bank deposits. Okay? So exception to bank secrecy law. 12, to accredit and register tax agents to refund or credit internal revenue taxes, to abate or cancel tax liabilities in certain cases. Yung mga tuklas remedies natin siya makikita. To prescribe additional procedures or documentary requirements, to delegate his power to subordinate office with a rank equivalent to a division chief. Okay, so yung powers of the commissioner, gusto ko class na i-familiarize mo lang yung sarili mo dyan. Alright? So yung maganda dito sa G-sheets natin, nakakompile na lahat ng kailangan malaman for taxation basically. So pwede mo i-browse to days before the board exam para lang familiar ka. Alright? Okay, so tapusin natin to last. Let's go to number 82. The Commissioner of Internal Revenue is granted certain powers. Ayan, enumerate natin. Ilan yung powers niya? 16. Which of the following is not a power? A. Interpret tax laws? Yes. Issue summons and subpoena? Yes. Enact tax laws and make amendments? No. Kasi yung C na yan, legislative function yan. Yung Commissioner of Internal Revenue, executive function yan. Tama? So C, mali yan. Congress yan. D. Make assessment and prescribe additional requirements? Yes. C for number 82. Which of the following statements is incorrect with respect to the power of the President? Si President, so President of the Philippines. A. Congress may authorize the President to fix within specified limit tariff rates? Yes. Ito yung exception natin sa non-delegation of taxing power, letter A. The President can veto any particular item. That's correct. The power of taxation can be delegated to the President of the Philippines? Yes. As long as administrative function lang. Assessment and collection. The President of the Philippines is empowered to grant tax exemption? Hindi. Nasa constitutional limitation natin na yung Congress lang yung pwede mag-exempt ng tax. Because Congress creates the tax laws, Congress also can make the tax exemptions or decide on tax exemptions. Dog is incorrect. Dog yung sagot sa 83. The place or authority that has the right to impose and collect taxes, situs of taxation, letter C. Place of taxation, i-expound natin yan sa individuals. And number 85, a fundamental rule in taxation. Property of one country may not be taxed by another country. Okay, it's an inherent limitation. International Committee, letter B. Ayan. Okay, so that's the end of our discussion on general principles. Next meeting class, we will discuss individuals. All right.